Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Ravand English Podcast. It's Brandon here. This is an easy English podcast for beginners. We practice real English in a calm way, with simple vocabulary and slow speaking. Today, we're going to do one simple thing. We're going to listen to a normal daily story that uses past tense again and again, so your brain starts to feel the past tense naturally. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel, hit like, and leave a small comment. Your support really helps this podcast grow, and it helps more English learners find these lessons. All right, take a slow breath, relax your shoulders, and let's begin. Yesterday was a very normal day. I didn't travel. I didn't do anything big. I just went to a cafe, worked on my laptop, drank coffee, and then came back home. That's it. Simple. But inside a simple day, you can hear a lot of past tense. I woke up at about 7. My alarm rang, and I opened my eyes slowly. I didn't jump out of bed. I stayed there for a minute, and I looked at the ceiling. My room felt quiet. The light looked soft. I felt a little sleepy, but I also felt okay. Then I got up. I walked to the bathroom, and I turned on the light. I washed my face, and I brushed my teeth. The water felt cold. So I blinked fast, and I made a funny face at myself in the mirror. I didn't try to look perfect. I just wanted to wake up. After that, I went back to my room and I got dressed. I wore a simple shirt and jeans. I checked the weather on my phone. It looked cloudy again, and the temperature looked low, so I grabbed a jacket. I also took a scarf, because I knew the wind would feel sharp outside. Then I went to the kitchen. I opened the fridge and I looked inside. I had eggs, milk, and some fruit. I didn't want a big breakfast, so I made something quick. I toasted bread, I cut an apple, and I poured coffee into a mug. The coffee smelled strong, and it made me feel more awake. I sat at the table and I ate slowly. While I ate, I thought about my plan. I wanted to work outside today, not at home. At home, I get distracted easily. I see small things around me, and suddenly I start cleaning, or I start checking my phone, or I start doing random jobs. But in a cafe, I usually focus more. I sit down, I open my laptop, and I work. So I finished my breakfast, I washed my cup, and I cleaned the table. I wiped the counter, and I put everything back in place. Then I packed my bag. I put my laptop in my backpack. I packed my charger. I also added a small notebook and a pen. Sometimes I like to write notes on paper. It feels simple and clear. Before I left, I checked my pockets. I took my keys. I took my wallet. I took my phone. Then I looked around my apartment just to make sure everything was okay. I turned off the lights. I locked the door, and I walked downstairs. Outside, the air felt cold. The street looked a little wet, like it rained during the night. Cars passed, and people walked quickly. Some people carried coffee cups. Some people wore big coats. I pulled my scarf closer, and I started walking toward the cafe. The cafe was not far. It was about 15 minutes away on foot. While I walked, I listened to the sounds of the city. I heard footsteps. I heard a bus. I heard a dog barking. I saw a man running with headphones. I saw a woman holding a paper bag from a bakery. The smell of bread floated in the air for a second, and it made me feel hungry again, even though I already ate. When I reached the cafe, I saw people inside through the window. The lights looked warm. I opened the door and I walked in. The cafe felt cozy. It smelled like coffee and pastries. Soft music played in the background. I looked around and I chose a table near the wall. I liked that spot because it felt quiet and stable. I didn't want a table in the middle where people walked past me every second. I put my bag on the chair and I took off my jacket. Then I walked to the counter to order. A barista smiled. She asked, "What can I get for you?" I looked at the menu, but I already knew what I wanted. I said, "A latte, please." She asked, "For here or to go?" I said, "For here, please." She asked my name, and I told her. Then I paid by card. She said, "It'll be ready soon." I went back to my table. I sat down, and I took my laptop out of my bag. I opened it, and I waited. While I waited, I looked around again. 2 students sat near the window. They talked quietly, and they shared a laptop. An older man sat alone with a newspaper. A couple stood near the counter and laughed about something small. The cafe felt alive, but it didn't feel loud. A few minutes later, my coffee was ready. The barista called my name, and I walked to the counter. I picked up the latte, and I carried it carefully to my table. The cup felt warm in my hands. I sat down again. I took a sip, and the coffee tasted smooth. It wasn't too sweet. It wasn't too strong. It was just right. Then I started working. I opened my notes, and I checked what I needed to do. I had a few tasks. I wanted to write, I wanted to answer messages, I wanted to plan a lesson. I didn't rush. I just started, step by step. At first, everything went well. I typed for a while, I wrote a few paragraphs, I fixed a few lines, I saved my file. I felt focused, and I felt proud of myself because I didn't waste time. But then, something small happened. The Wi-Fi stopped working. I didn't notice it right away. I clicked on a page, and it didn't load. I waited. Nothing happened. I refreshed. Still nothing. I checked another page. Again, nothing. At first, I thought it was my laptop. I turned the Wi-Fi off and on. I tried again. It still didn't work. So I stood up and I walked to the counter. I didn't want to be annoying, but I needed internet for part of my work. I said, "Hi, sorry, is the Wi-Fi working?" The barista looked at the screen behind the counter. Then she looked at me. She said, "Oh, it was working earlier. Let me check." She checked something quickly, and she said, "Try again now." I went back to my table. I sat down. I tried again. This time, it worked. I felt relief. I didn't say anything out loud, but inside I said, "Okay, good, back to work." So I continued. I answered a few emails. I wrote a message to someone. I opened a document and edited it. I checked my calendar. I planned my next day a little. I didn't do everything perfectly, but I did enough. After about an hour, I took another sip of my latte. The cup felt lighter now. The coffee was almost finished. I looked at the foam on the top, and I smiled because it looked messy and real. My coffee wasn't a perfect picture. It was just coffee. I wanted more caffeine, so I decided to order one more drink. Not another latte. Something smaller. I walked to the counter again, and I said, "Can I get an espresso, please?" The barista nodded. "Sure." I paid, and I waited. Then I took the espresso back to my table. It was small, dark, and strong. I drank it slowly because espresso hits fast. After that, I worked again. But the cafe changed a little during the day. More people came in, more chairs moved, more voices filled the room. It wasn't loud, but it was busier than before. A group of friends sat at the table next to me. They talked, they laughed, and they told stories. I didn't listen to their words clearly, but I heard their energy. It made the cafe feel warmer. At one point, one of them dropped a spoon. It hit the floor and made a sharp sound. Everyone looked for 1 second, and then everyone went back to their own world. Small things like that happen, and life just continues. I kept working, but my focus changed. My mind started drifting. I opened my phone. I checked one thing, then I checked another thing, then I checked something else again. I didn't like that. I didn't want to waste time, so I put my phone face down on the table. I told myself, just work. Just do 10 more minutes. That helped. I wrote more. I finished one task, then I started another. After a while, my laptop battery got low. I saw the warning on the screen. I forgot to plug it in earlier. I looked around for a power outlet. I saw one near the wall, but it was behind another chair. I didn't want to move someone's things, so I waited. A few minutes later, the person in that chair stood up and left. I quickly stood up too. I moved my chair a little, and I plugged in my charger. Then I sat down again. I felt comfortable again. My laptop charged, my coffee helped, and my work started moving forward. At about noon, my stomach started hurting a little. Not pain, just hunger. I realized I needed food. I didn't want a big meal. I didn't want to feel sleepy after eating, so I chose something light. I walked to the counter and I ordered a small sandwich. I also ordered water because coffee without water can make you feel strange later. I took the sandwich back to my table and I ate slowly. The bread felt warm. The sandwich tasted simple and good. I drank water and I felt better. While I ate, I looked out the window. People walked past the cafe. Some people looked stressed. Some people looked calm. Some people talked on the phone with serious faces. Some people smiled at someone next to them. I watched them for a moment, and I thought about something simple. Everyone had their own story. Everyone went somewhere. Everyone came somewhere. Everyone carried something inside. Then I finished my sandwich and I went back to work. After lunch, I felt more relaxed. My fingers moved easily on the keyboard. I typed faster. I wrote more lines. I deleted bad sentences. I added better ones. I fixed mistakes. I didn't talk to many people, but one small moment happened that made me smile. A man walked past my table, and he accidentally bumped my chair. It wasn't hard, but it moved my chair a little. He stopped right away. "Oh, sorry," he said. "It's okay," I said. He smiled politely, and he walked away. That moment was nothing, but it reminded me of how people behave in normal life. Small mistake, quick apology, simple answer. Then life continues. A little later, I went to the bathroom. When I came back, I saw the barista cleaning a table nearby. She wiped it carefully, and she moved the chairs back in place. She worked fast, but she didn't look stressed. She looked experienced. I sat down again, and I opened my notebook. I wrote a few ideas on paper. I didn't write long sentences. I just wrote short notes. Then I looked at my notes, and I felt organized again. Time passed quietly. At some point, I checked the clock, and I realized I stayed in the cafe for a long time. It surprised me because it didn't feel long. It felt like one continuous moment. I thought, okay, I should go home soon. But I didn't leave immediately. I wanted to finish one more thing. So I stayed and I worked for another 30 minutes. During those minutes, I finished a draft. I saved it, I read it one more time, I changed a few words. Then I closed the document. That felt like a good ending. So I packed my bag, I closed my laptop. I unplugged my charger. I put my notebook back inside. I put my jacket on. Then I stood up and I looked at my table. I didn't want to leave a mess, so I cleaned my space. I threw away a napkin. I pushed the chair back, and I carried my empty cup to the counter. The barista looked at me and said, "Have a good day." I said, "Thank you, you too." Then I walked out of the cafe. Outside, the air felt colder than before. The sky looked darker. The wind blew stronger. I pulled my scarf up again, and I started walking home. On the way home, I passed a small park. A few children played near the trees. Their parents stood nearby and watched. A dog ran after a ball. Someone laughed loudly, and it echoed for a second. I kept walking. I didn't feel tired, but I felt full. Not full of food, full of the day. I worked, I drank coffee, I sat among people, and I finished tasks. That combination made me feel satisfied. When I arrived home, I opened the door and I walked inside. The apartment felt quiet again. I took off my shoes, I hung my jacket, I put my keys on the table. Then I did something simple. I drank water. I sat down for a minute. I didn't turn on music. I didn't turn on a video. I just sat and let my mind slow down. After a short rest, I went to the kitchen. I didn't want a big dinner, but I needed something, so I cooked something easy. I made rice and I cooked eggs. I cut a tomato. I added salt. I ate slowly and I felt calm. After dinner, I cleaned the dishes. I washed the pan. I wiped the counter again. I didn't deep clean. I just kept things normal. Then I sat on the couch and I picked up my phone. I checked a few messages. I answered one or two. Then I put the phone down. I didn't want my whole evening to disappear on the screen. So I did something else. I opened my laptop again, but this time I didn't work hard. I just looked at what I did earlier. I checked my draft one more time. I fixed one small detail. Then I closed the laptop again. Later, I took a shower. The warm water helped my body relax. I changed into comfortable clothes. I brushed my teeth. I washed my face again. Before bed, I stood near the window and I looked outside. The street looked quiet. The lights from cars passed slowly. The city felt softer at night. Then I got into bed. I didn't fall asleep immediately because my mind still played small scenes from the day. The cafe table, the warm coffee, the sound of cups, the barista saying, "Have a good day," the wind outside, the walk home. But after a while, my thoughts slowed down, my body relaxed, and I fell asleep. And that was yesterday, a normal day, a cafe day, a laptop day, a coffee day, a simple day that still felt good. Thanks for listening today. If this kind of calm, easy story helps you, subscribe to the channel, hit like, and leave a small comment so I know you're here. You can also write a short line about your day yesterday, something simple like, "I went to a cafe," or "I worked on my laptop." I read your comments, and they really help the channel grow and reach more English learners. All right, my friends, take care of yourself, keep it simple, and I'll see you in the next episode.